Football Podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Satkoviak, and for the third time, we are joined by Matt Flip of the Roar Lions Roar Podcast, helping us break down the first of four quarterfinals games this weekend. Are we quarterfinals? I can't count. We'll call it quarterfinals games this weekend. Mr. Matt, thank you again for joining us tonight, sir. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I am very excited to talk the next step in Penn State's climb through the playoff. It was a very fun time against SMU in the first round, and I am fascinated to see what round two looks like. With stopping Ashton Genty will be an absolute pleasure to watch Tom Allen try to figure out how to do it.
Fun story for you is I completely forgot you nerfed your old Twitter account, and before the Big Ten title game, we're like, hey, we should talk to Matt and see if he wants to come on to talk. Like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I DM'd you, and I'm like, oh, he hasn't seen it yet. That's not like him. And then, like, a week and a half later, I saw you liked one of our tweets. I'm like, oh, damn, he has a new Twitter account. I blew that.
I didn't nerf it. I went to change it because I got one of, like, the emails from, like, I forget even who it was. It was like someone was trying to change your password. So I reset all my passwords. And my Twitter, which I made in 2011, was an old email, so I didn't have access to the email. So I'm like, all right, well, a decade of tweeting goes down the drain. I had to have a reset.
That's my Apple email is for some reason my Bowling Green student email. So if I ever need anything from there, it's just SOL on that one. Clinton, sir, welcome back. How are you tonight?
Well, Ryan, you know I'm stressed. I got hundreds of dollars on the line tonight. I'm on Raw. St. Brown just caught his first pass, but then pitched it off to Jameson Williams, who scored a touchdown. So I don't even know if I get credit.
Let's go!
I don't even know if I get credit for that. I don't know what that counts as. Anyways, I'm great. I have a little more of a voice. Matt, if you haven't tuned in, I've been mildly without a voice since last Thursday, so hopefully it lasts. It was a little bit rough last night with Dale from Athlon, who covers Oregon. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping my voice will survive tonight because I'm excited for this Penn State game. This is the next step in a new history for Penn State. You know, we're 12-team playoff, got the first win under our belts, and I'm excited to talk about this with you.
Yeah, if the Nittany Lions get a win tomorrow at time of recording, that will set the program record for wins in a single season with 13. So that's awesome. A fun little piece of history on the line. Again, it's interesting that they have a chance to do it with no Michigan, no Ohio State, no Michigan State on the schedule. It's very unique, but I'm appreciative of it regardless.
Absolutely. Mr. Satkoviak, how are you?
So I'm doing a new workout thing next month because ever since I ran my half, I've just been doing like this like unencumbered bulk where it's not really structured. It's just lifting weights and eating whatever you want, which is like, that's the way to go, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to get Taco Bell for dinner tonight, kind of like a Last Supper kind of thing. And they did not give us half of our order. So it was very sad. It was a very sad day.
What did you order?
2 burritos and some Fiesta potatoes. So I just ate potatoes for dinner.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't want to drive back. I'm like, you know what, whatever. I'll just have some cottage cheese or something. So that was my day. I've also come to realize or remember how terrible this time of year is here because, like, for you, I don't know that we have any warm weather people who listen to us, but, like, you get the sads that football season is over, and then you look out the window, and it's like, Jesus, I haven't seen the sun in 3 weeks. And then you start taking your Christmas decorations down, and it's like, what is there to live for right now? It's February in the Midwest, so I'm having an existential crisis today that Taco Bell made worse. Anyway, I'm here. I'm happy to talk about this game. And Matt, I have so many questions for you. I've been dying to ask you so many different things about this Penn State team. And I don't want to get too big picture today because there's a time and there's a place for it. But going into this playoff, right, there was a lot of talk about seeding. And I think that's only been magnified with how this has played out. And I mean, it's like the 2 Big Ten matchups of the weekend is kind of like the microcosm of it, right? Oregon beats Penn State in a wild Big Ten title game. And their reward after a bye is, congratulations, here's Ohio State. And they look like Ohio State, not the Ohio State that lost to Michigan. Other side of the bracket, SMU. Well, Penn State loses. They get SMU in the first round at home. And now you are facing a G5 team that just happened to get a bye because the ACC and the Big 12 were not the best this year. So what I wanted to ask you is, I mean, we talked preseason about what success is for this season for Penn State. And I think by those measures that we talked preseason, like this has already been unquestionably a successful season for Penn State. And you noted it, man. They're one win away from the all-time record for wins in a season. However, context matters with everything, right? And you get SMU in the first round, ACC team, but also an ACC team that is in its first year of playing Power 5 football.
Yep.
And now you get a G5 team in the playoff. And like, it's kind of one of those classic no-win situations, because if Penn State wins this game, everyone looks at Penn State and says, congratulations, you beat a team that you were an 11-point favorite over. Whoop-de-doo, go do it against Georgia or Notre Dame. But that's a story for another day. But you lose this game, and the pitchforks I don't think the pitchforks are out, but everyone is going to be pissed off. I don't know that I had a question in there, but is my analysis of the situation spot on, spot off, somewhere in between?
I think it's spot on, and I'm glad that you called out, our conversation in the preseason where I said Penn State needs to make the playoff this year for this to be a success. And I think success always has to be a sliding scale, especially in college football where you have 12 data points in the regular season. Like, you need to really adjust your expectations on a week-to-week basis. So when Penn State was starting the season, like I said, I think it was playoff or bust. They accomplished that goal. And then something happened in, I want to say it was like November 2nd or November 9th, whenever the Ohio State game was, and the offense laid an egg. 0 offensive touchdowns against Ohio State at home. Penn State was undefeated. Ohio State already had the loss. They spotted them 10 points to kick things off, and the offense laid an egg. And from that moment, my expectation had to change for what I thought would constitute success. And it was win a playoff game. And then the bracket comes out, and you see it's SMU and Boise State. And now it's like, all right, given all that context, maybe success has to be you got to make the national semifinals. So it is interesting. Like, if you go back and tell, the August version of myself where we're at right now, I'm over the moon. But I do think that for this Penn State season to be considered a true success, they got to get one more win. You got to navigate the minefield that's going to be this Fiesta Bowl. And if they pull it off, I don't think I could sit here, no matter what happens against, Notre Dame or Georgia, and say a team that won 13 games wasn't successful. So I really do think that it was a really evolving measure of what success looked like. And I think this is the final barometer for me in terms of, is this season a success or not, is going to be this Fiesta Bowl.
I'm glad you said that, because like, what is successful for everyone? Obviously, it's subjective to each person, but it's also subjective when we're talking about a fan base versus national perception. And some people tend to care more about what other people think about their program more so than others. And I mean, I'm sure you're used to this as a Penn State fan, because I get this shit all the time as a Notre Dame fan, where it always just seems like the goalposts move, where it's like,
always
you do something like 2020, they beat Clemson when Trevor Lawrence had COVID. And it's like, well, whatever, they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, it doesn't count, 2 years later, they beat Clemson when they were a top 10 team. It was like, who cares? They won only 10 games this year. It wasn't the same level of Clemson. So when you look at this playoff path for Penn State, you know that if they beat Boise State and then they get Georgia and they lose to Georgia, there's going to be those people who are like, well, you still can't win the big game. Is that something that, like, you guys even care about? Like, who cares what National Pundit X thinks? Who cares what Feinbaum is saying on his radio show? Or is it like, is there something in the back of your head where you're like, all right, you know what, it was a good season, but also like we're kind of wanting that next step. We're wanting that taste of what's next.
I think it's a bit of both. Like, I don't really care about people's outside perception of what Penn State is, because I think there is like a false narrative over like what James Franklin's program is. Like, my biggest pet peeve, and I talked about with you guys before, is the narrative that he's a good recruiter but a bad game day coach. Like, the guy signed more classes ranked outside the top 20 than he has in the top 10. And he's consistently, churning out the product that he is. So I really have a hard time really putting that much stock into like those big national reporters. But with that being said, like, at some point, Penn State does need to beat a big boy. And I think it's great that Penn State has the opportunity, should they beat Boise State, to beat 2 big boys. No matter what happens, they're going to have to play at least 1 or 2 humongous national brands if they want to win a national title. I have thought for a long time Penn State is not capable of winning a national title. But again, all bets are out the window, or all bets are off, if they beat Boise State. So I do think that I do want Penn State, like me personally, I want Penn State to be at least 2 bona fide top 5 teams to be a national champion. I think you need that on your resume to be considered a great team. And I'm glad they're going to get the opportunity. But if they lose, to, not Boise, but if they lose to Georgia or Notre Dame, it is what it is. Yeah, they probably still can't win the big game, but that just tells me that they're not where they need to be as a program yet. And I still think they're heading in the right direction.
So, kind of looking at another piece, we're talking about James Franklin in the big game, but what about Drew Aller? I'm sitting here listening to some of these national podcasts this week and just the enjoyment of the pick'em of the games. But then I hear him continue to say, we don't trust Drew Aller in this game. We don't trust Drew Aller that he can win this game if someone stops their run game. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I mean, the first element is Drew Aller indoors is a very different beast than Drew Aller outdoors. He's played 3 dome games in his career. Michigan State 2023, where Penn State won by like 40. The Peach Bowl last year, where Olu opted out. Like, there were a ton of opt-outs. The Penn State offense was kind of stagnant, but Drew almost went for 400 yards, I want to say, in that game. And then the Big Ten title game, where despite throwing through 2 picks, I think Drew Aller looked like one of the best versions of himself we've ever seen. So I think a lot of it is in the big games we've seen Drew Aller play, whether that be Ohio State the past couple of years, Michigan last year, the offense has shit the bed, for lack of a better term. And when you're the quarterback at Penn State, that blame is going to fall on you. I think it's pretty unfair. I think Mike Yurcich's play calling and then Andy Kotelnicki's play calling was uninspired, to say the least. And Aller has not really had the ability to air it out like the 5-star talent that he, was coming out of high school, and he's shown at times. And I get it. For a lot of people, you need to see a guy do it before you can trust them. And we've seen these Penn State running backs tear apart Oregon, tear apart Auburn a couple years back. Like, these big name brands that people want to see Penn State play and beat, we've seen the running backs deliver in those environments, but we haven't seen Drew Aller do it. So I totally understand the concern there, but I have no doubt that, especially with Tyler Warren, like, this passing game led by Aller can't get the job done, at least in a not that stressful manner tomorrow night.
And I wonder if some of it isn't that they're already just foreshadowing and looking past Boise State and counting this as a win, and what can they do against Georgia, Notre Dame, or, if they get past that game into the title, if he's got to win it against Ohio State, Oregon, or Texas. And because a lot of them, outside of Damian Harris, I think he just likes to be different on Until Saturday, nor does he watch any Northern football, picking Boise State to beat Penn State, which seems asinine to me. No offense, Broncos fans. But I don't know. I'm not the Penn State fan. I'm a Big Ten fan. I believe in Drew Aller. I think he can get it done. But I feel like they're just going to argue. If he goes out and he whips on Boise State, it's going to be the same scenario that we talked about with Franklin. Well, he didn't do it against Georgia, or he didn't do it against Notre Dame. I feel like you're not going to win, right? It feels like a lose-lose type situation.
And Penn State quarterbacks have never gone supernova in big games. Like, Trace McSorley's stat line in the 2016 Ohio State upset was pretty terrible. Like, he was 8 for 17. You think back to the Rose Bowl in 2023, at the end of the 2022 season, it was one big play to Keandre Lambert-Smith, and then the running backs did the rest. So, quarterbacks don't normally go supernova for James Franklin in these kind of games. So the first time I see it happen, will be the first time any of us see it happen. And I do think Boise is a great opportunity for it. But again, there is going to be that narrative. It's, okay, that's a G5 defense. Show them what you can do against a top 10 unit.
It is a G5 defense. And this is kind of something that I've been thinking about is this feels like a game for Penn State where offensively you just don't want to make a mistake, because it feels like the only way you really lose this game, Ashton Genty aside, is if you make that catastrophic mistake, turnover deep in your own territory, you give Boise State a short field or a special teams miscue. And it feels almost like, the game plan that they had against SMU, where it's like, all right, well, let's just kind of ground and pound them because we know eventually that they're going to break. We don't need to kind of air it out on them. But the other side of that coin too is Boise's, I think, second in the nation in sacks this year. So maybe take advantage of an over aggressive defensive front who's trying to get after the quarterback and mix things up, draws, screens, short passes to Tyler Warren, or getting Tyler Warren the ball out of the backfield to try to create matchups in space.
The SMU game plan, I am curious what that actually looked like when your defense spots you 14 points. I heard people say, well, the offense struggled. And it's like, well, they kind of gave up 2 drives right off the bat because a former Italian walk-on linebacker could not stop picking off balls. And then the Virginia State offensive player of the year as a running back, who's now a linebacker, Tony Rojas, went like Saquon USC 2016 mode and just made people miss in the open field. So I do always wonder, what that game plan was going to look like in that environment. Like it was really windy, dude. Like you watch the punters in that game, you watch the kickers in that game. It was terrible. If somebody was in those stands, it was brutal. So I never really thought it was going to be a big Drew game. And I think the plan was always going to be Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Katron especially, I thought had a great game. And I do think that in this, domed environment against a Boise defense that is hyper aggressive, you made the comment that, you should be able to find a little bit of space should you take advantage of how aggressive they are. Boise gets pretty much all of their sacks when they bring pressure. They rarely are able to do it on 4-man rushes. Shout out to Landon Tengwall, former Penn State offensive lineman, who has a good show, Inside the Wall, who was going over some film on his YouTube channel. And he noticed that. I thought that was interesting. So with that being said, that should open a lot of opportunities to get the ball to Tyler Warren 3 yards down the field. And then, like he often does, Tyler Warren can take 3 yards into 7 yards pretty quickly. And I do think that's going to be a big part of what the offense tries to do. Quick passes, take advantage of that hyper aggressiveness that Boise State is going to have to play with, because the Boise State pass defense ranks lower than Kent State. And if you're lower than Kent State in anything, that's bad, dude.
That's not good.
That's not a space you want to exist in. So I do think, Boise State needs to really be feast or famine. And if they famine more than they feast, I have a hard time, just seeing the path for the Boise defense to get the Penn State offense off the field consistently.
I think that's going to be the tagline for this show. You don't want to be lower than Kent State in anything.
It's very few things.
Well, overall, the Boise State defense is ranked 71st in yards per play, so the yards are there if Penn State wants to get them. But you mentioned the sacks. The Boise State D-line is second in the country in sacks, so if they can find a way to get a little pressure on Aller, I'm not going to say they can, but they could cause a little ruckus there.
The good thing with the Kotelnicki offense is that there's always an outlet. Aller is very good at navigating the pocket. I cannot believe how he runs like he's got oatmeal in his shoes. It's the best way I can describe it. Somebody said that to me a couple years back, and it stayed in my brain ever since. And it's the funniest way to describe something.
That is great.
Because it looks like his shoes are falling off every time he's running. But he's more athletic than he is. And there's always going to be the dump off to Singleton, the dump off to Tyler Warren, the dump off to Katron Allen. There's going to be availability for Aller if he can just not get rattled.
I was impressed at the Big Ten Championship. We went down to not quite field level, but the bottom of the stands to watch warm-ups. Aller's a big-ass dude, man.
He's huge.
He is not small. I was like, holy cow, this kid's huge.
He showed it in that last play where he rifled that ball into Trey Wallace while getting tackled. Yeah, he's a big kid.
And sometimes you don't really notice it until you see these guys in person. I had a clinical rotation down in Florida, and this is not someone I treated, so I'm allowed to share with you guys, even though it's been 7 years ago and no one probably cares. But Carlos Dunlap, who used to be a former defensive end for the Bengals, I had seen him in person with pads on in a pregame warm-up, and then I saw him without pads, and I was like, holy shit, he looks just as big without pads as he does with pads. This guy's a monster. I'd crap down my leg if this dude was sprinting at me. But just seeing some of these dudes in real life, man, I guess I never really looked at Aller's stats as far as height and weight, and he is a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big kid.
Is there any concern now that Prbula is gone and we're in game 2 without him? What's the plan behind him if something happens to Aller in this game?
It's
Tyler Warren. Okay, thought we might get Tyler Warren full time.
There's nothing wrong. Tyler Warren, really, he throws the ball like it's wet eternally. The way he throws the ball is just hilarious.
We got oatmeal and wet balls. We are on target tonight.
Ethan Grunkmeyer is and first of all, on the Bo point, Bo shared a post on Instagram a couple days ago with just a little Nittany lion, a white heart emoji and a lion emoji. And it was a whole slideshow of photos of him as a Nittany lion. And the last photo was him as a kid on Christmas opening a Penn State helmet. And I'm like, oh, this kid wanted to be here so badly. And it broke my heart. It's that kid wants to be on this team still. A PA kid, it was such a bummer. I hope he tears it up at Missouri.
Yeah.
Funny enough, there's also a Penn State quarterback, Pennsylvania quarterback, Matt Zollers, who Penn State and Missouri were going back and forth with recruiting-wise, who was going to be at Missouri next year too. So that's interesting. But the backup now is Ethan Grunkmeyer, 4-star kid from Ohio, similar to Drew Aller. They both train under the same quarterback trainer, Brad Mandler. And Grunk got in towards the end of the game last time out against SMU. His first throw was a pick, which is great. Get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. It was a tip ball. Trey Wallace should have caught it cleanly. It's not a pick, but it bounced off his hands, and it was a pick. And I think those reps are important for Ethan Grunkmeyer. I'd be lying if I said I could really give you a decent evaluation on this kid. That was his first game action of the year. Came against SMU in the playoff. You hear good things that he's doing well on the scout team, but a true freshman versus a third-year guy in Bo Pribula who was an absolute baller and would, take hits left and right for this team. It's a bit of a concern should Aller get hurt. Franklin did say this week they have a package ready to go for Ethan Grunkmeyer if they need it, but Ethan Grunkmeyer is not the athlete Pribula is, so I can't imagine what that is. I don't know if I really buy that. But if they need him, they do have Ethan Grunkmeyer running as the 2 right now.
Yeah. Well, I want to get maybe not to the elephant in the room, but the Bronco in the room, and that is Ashton Genty. We're going to flip to the other side of the ball now. Matt, can you take a guess? If you haven't already looked at the stats, hopefully you haven't. You know how many carries Mr. Genty had on this season?
Oh, we recorded our preview yesterday, so is it 347?
It is 344, and in 13 games played, that equates to 26 carries per game. Now, one would think that Boise State will not pull the Ohio State versus Michigan playbook and just run it up the gut 20 times and get nothing. It's like hitting your head off a wall. So my thought is, how concerned or how much thought should Penn State be putting into the fact that maybe Boise State utilizes, obviously they're going to give Genty carries, but utilizes Genty with misdirection, some eye candy, just so they can get, or as a decoy, just to get eyeballs on him and getting them moving, right? So he's the feature piece. If I can get 5, 6, 7 of your defenders watching him, and that's not where the ball's going, how much is Penn State going to have to kind of play around with that?
I think if Penn State loses this game and Tom Allen is sitting down in a press conference and he said, we were more worried about the fake of Ashton Genty than we were about Ashton Genty, he should be not allowed back on the plane home. I really do think that even if they're trying to use a decoy with that guy, Ashton Genty, I think, has been the best running back I've seen in college football since 2000. I think this millennium, he's been the best. And I was a huge Saquon guy, obviously. And there's been a ton of great backs since then. But Genty's patience, his usage, his ability to almost get better as the game goes along. I think, even if Boise State tries to make some stuff happen with Cam Campers and Maddox Madsen, you're going to let him try to get theirs, because if Ashton Genty burns you for 200 yards, you kind of wonder what the whole game plan even was for. Yeah. Because it's got to be priority 1, 2, 3 is slowing down Ashton Genty. So I would not be surprised if there were some wrinkles. I mean, Boise State's had almost a month off. There's going to be some stuff in there that we haven't seen on film.
Statue of Liberty, perhaps?
If they come out there and if they run the Statue of Liberty, I will actively switch my rooting interest to Boise State happily. That would be awesome. But I do think that, stopping Genty, even if they're just going to use him as a decoy, you sell out for that decoy because it's Ashton Genty. He's earned that respect around college football.
What's a yardage total for Genty in this game, from your perspective, Matt, that he would need for Boise to win the game?
I've thought a lot about this, and I talked about this on my podcast yesterday. I don't think the best way to look at this is through total yardage. I think it's via carries. If Ashton Genty gets 153 yards and it's oh my God, he got the ball 35 times, it's that's probably going to happen. But if he gets that on 14 carries, then I think it's a bigger problem. So if Ashton Genty's carry numbers are low, that tells me that Penn State is taking control of the game and Boise has to throw their way back in. So if I were to put a number, just for the sake of the question, a number on total yardage, under 130, I don't think you're going to slow down Ashton Genty to the point where you're going to keep him under 100 yards. I don't even give him a 25-yard grace period, pretty much, to factor in explosive play, which the Penn State defense can let up. But I think 130 is a range I'm comfortable with. That feels about right for where I think he should be in this game.
Good, Ray.
How do you think just the whole picture of this Boise State offense? I mean, obviously the Penn State front seven, fantastic, fantastic. How do you view just kind of that overall matchup, Penn State's defense versus Boise State's offense?
The Penn State defensive line has really good vibes going because of what happened last week, where Abdul Carter, I think, really emerged. Like, Abdul Carter started really slow as an edge rusher. And in that SMU game, he was being held nonstop, and he still couldn't be stopped. SMU, kind of similar to what I was talking about with Boise State, SMU kind of took the run game out on their own by being down 14-0 pretty early. Mm-hmm. So they kind of had to throw. So I don't feel all that confident, or as confident, I want to say, as I think I normally would be should Penn State have played like a more normal game flow game against SMU, because the run game really couldn't be a factor against SMU. I do think the Penn State defensive tackles, especially Zane Durant, can have humongous games. Zane Durant's been an absolute monster as an undersized, quote undersized. He's like 290 pounds. But for a defensive tackle, that's a smaller guy. I do think the front seven for Penn State needs to play very disciplined, because I think they're going to run a ton of misdirection with Ashton Genty. That offensive line for Boise is not bad. That's one of the better offensive lines I think they're going to face all year. But they need to be gap disciplined, and they need to wrap up, first and foremost. Genty is great at not going down on first contact. So if a defensive tackle or an edge rusher get the chance to wrap him up behind the line of scrimmage, they have to make sure they get him on the ground.
Yeah, I think what's the stat that you take his yards after contact this year and he's still second leading rusher in college football?
It's crazy.
Insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
So let's see. I actually have it right here. The real reason why Genty is a true magician on the gridiron, 1,889 of his 2,497 yards have come after contact this year. He would still be the nation's leading rusher by 229 yards if you take those away.
He's special. Dude,
He's a monster. The one thing I'm curious, and this kind of projects forward here a little bit and is off topic of the Penn State, but how he projects as an NFL back from the standpoint of volume of carries that he's had.
Mm-hmm.
So wear and tear. But how is he in the pass game? I heard again from until Saturday today, though, that Genty actually came out of high school as a wide receiver and transitioned into running back. So maybe he didn't have hands. That's why he's now a running back. Or maybe we can bank on the fact he just bulked up and had a body to run the ball, and he can also catch, but also like pass blocking, like such a dominant back. But the amount of volume you have there, I'm just kind of curious how he pans out. I think he's going to be a stud. I wonder, is he a 3-down stud in the NFL that you can rely on all the way? And I know it was a side tangent there, guys, but I've been curious about that for about 2 months now.
It feels Jonathan Taylor-esque.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be great?
Doesn't it? Like, Jonathan Taylor had 1 million carries at Wisconsin for forever, and then he kind of got hurt a little bit, and people were worried about it. But then once he got his body right again, it was that. So I do think he needs a nice on-ramp into the NFL just to let his body kind of get back underneath him a little bit after this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting guy to watch, though. I'm thrilled to watch tomorrow night, and I mean, there's no way around. This is the best running back Penn State's played all year. Ohio State is in line with Penn State for best duo, but best individual back. This is a challenge like no other, and I really think my key here is trying to think, is Maddox Madsen good enough to pass them to victory if Penn State can stifle Genty enough? And I've not seen enough of him. I know people have talked about he takes care of the ball very well.
He really does.
But their offense is kind of built that way to make him do it. Like, if you have to be forced to throw to win a game, and not only forced to throw to win a game, but do it against a Power 4 opponent who has a top 3 defense in the country, bit of a different challenge than UNLV in the Mountain West.
Penn State's going to run a lot of man. They always run a lot of man. Like, even if they go 7 in the box, they're still going to leave their corners on islands. I do think we're going to see a lot less of like Zion Tracy, who plays the nickel role, for lack of a better term. And there's always going to be opportunities for athletes like Boise has to make plays when Penn State goes in man coverage. It's just going to be a matter of if Maddox Madsen's going to have the time to get there. That's, I think, the more interesting matchup here.
Certainly.
So I don't want to phrase these as keys to the game, because that gets into the cliche of take care of the ball, get after the quarterback, blah, 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 blah. But looking at this game, Matt, what 3 things have to go right for Penn State for them to emerge victorious tomorrow night?
They need big plays in the passing game. I think that's first and foremost. That's been such a major key to Penn State's success in dome games. Like, especially thinking back to Michigan State or the Peach Bowl. They didn't really have a ton of explosive plays against Oregon in the passing game, but that's because out of nowhere, the Penn State offensive line started run blocking like they were like the 1990s Penn State teams, and they just bowled over Oregon. I don't think you can repeat that. Like, I think it would be wise of Boise to load the box here a little bit more than Oregon did and try to limit the running game of Singleton and Allen. So I think they're going to need multiple, let's call it 20-plus yard passing options here, whether that be Tyler Warren. I think Amari Evans is a guy I think can find the end zone. On the preview pod, I said he'll find it twice. Amari Evans has really come on strong. He scored against Oregon in the Big Ten title game. He's really come on strong late in the year. He didn't do anything in the passing game against SMU, but again, nobody did. So number one for me is going to be the Penn State offense needs to hit on explosive plays. And if their opportunity comes, which it will come, like I said, this Boise State pass defense ranks below Kent State somehow. So they got to find a way to make that happen. And there'll be opportunities there. Second is just don't turn the ball over. Like Boise State is the kind of team that can hold the ball for it's like a service academy sometimes. If you want to give them a 19-play, 11-minute drive, they will happily take that. And thankfully, Drew Aller is very good at taking care of the football. It is what killed them, I think, against Oregon. Not that those 2 turnovers I do not believe were his fault, but again, they show up in his stat line, so it is what it is. So take care of the football. And number 3 is you're gonna slow down Genty, but you're not gonna stop him. Limit Genty's big runs to like 15 yards. Don't let him break off a 75-yarder. Let Genty move the sticks as often as he can because he's going to do that to everybody. But if he's in the open field and he rips one off for 85 yards, that means there is a much bigger problem, and the Penn State defensive front is getting pushed around a little bit. So those are my 3, not quite keys to the game, but things I'm looking out for.
And then other side of that coin is there a matchup or something that you are eyeing in this game that if this goes against Penn State, if this goes wrong for Penn State, they can find themselves on the losing end?
Ooh. I've thought a lot about this, and I've gone back and forth on what the best strategy to stop Tyler Warren is. And part of me thinks the best strategy isn't just to let him go for 50 catches, because like USC did that, and they should have won that game. Like Tyler Warren's best game for Penn State.
Ruh-roh. This happened last time. I think we got you. You're back. Maybe. Possibly.
You guys got me? I know it's
Yep.
your mic right. My annual tradition of Riverside pumping me out. Live audio.
Yeah, right. Compelling radio.
So can you you're able to finish what you were saying about Warren there? I think we missed that last little bit you were saying about him.
You guys got me still?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Cool. Do that there. Put this here. I don't think my mic is being picked up, but if the audio sounds fine.
I hear you.
All right, cool. So the Warren point, I have often wondered if the best plan wasn't just to let him get, 15 catches for, 100-something yards because USC did it and it should have worked. So in terms of things that can go wrong for Penn State, I think it's Boise State figures out the best way to handle Tyler Warren, whether that be don't let him do anything or let him do everything. But if there's a moment in this game where I'm like, Warren is open all the time, it makes me think that Boise State thinks they have a strategy similar to what USC had, and that's going to work. So whether that be Warren goes for 0 catches or goes for 1 million, if he's at either end of that extreme, I am going to be a little bit nervous about what Boise State is thinking of their options in this game. If Boise State goes out there and is able to bottle up Singleton and Allen, which is not a huge problem I'm worried about because no one's been able to do it for a couple of weeks, but if they put the shoulders on Drew Aller, not that Drew can't do it, but again, I haven't seen him do it, but I've seen the running backs do it more often than not. I think that could be a problem. And then I think the final one for me, if once again 50-50 balls come for receivers and no one answers the bell. I was pretty critical of Trey Wallace in that Ohio State game, not fighting for the football. I just don't think he was good enough in that game. And then that Oregon game, the final pick of the game, where Aller's going down the sideline to Trey Wallace, I would have liked to have seen Trey fight for that a little bit more. So I think those are 3 keys that Boise can take advantage of that could help them win the game.
That Warren point is so fascinating because I think it was that the Solid Verbal Clinton where they were talking about Penn State has a Tyler Warren problem where it was basically like everything in the offense is flowing through Tyler Warren, and they're not really developing a plan B. Whereas if something were to happen where, Tyler Warren gets hurt or a team figures out how to neutralize him, then it's like, I don't know what else we have to throw to at this point in time.
Yeah, I think it was them, and it kind of exemplified that during the Ohio State game, right? Ohio State just let Caleb Downs, and I think Lathan Ransom was back for that game, just kind of trail him around and limited what he can do. But that's a challenge for anybody to do, right? Because Penn State puts Warren in so many spots, and maybe that's some of the talk that both the Solid Verbal until Saturday, I believe Andy and Ari have talked about, that why Penn State at that one point when they're inside the 5 didn't give Tyler Warren the ball at all when it's probably your best option there.
That was way too much
score. So
from Koloniki there. Like, I love the guy, but that was just that was way too much hubris. He was trying to play, 3D chess when really you're just playing Yahtzee. Just one thing, hit the button, dude.
Yep. And that's what amazes me. And we talked about this ad nauseum after the Ohio State Michigan game, but it's not just Ryan Day or James Franklin. Sometimes I feel like coaches and coordinators make games much harder than they need to be. Sometimes you don't need to outsmart somebody. Just run your damn offense and go let your best players win you games.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it can be that simple.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful with that. When I fully expect Penn State's going to be Boise. I think Brian and I both picked them on our Pick'em show last Thursday, and both picked them to cover the spread. We think they're going to win fairly easily, but don't make it harder. When they beat Boise this week and they go play Notre Dame and Georgia next week, don't make it harder than it needs to be. Just let Tyler Warren be Tyler Warren, let Aller cook, and feed your running backs, and let the chips fall where they may. And sometimes, and you've watched him every week closely, sometimes I feel like Kotelnicki tries to get just a little too cute with things, and I hope that doesn't cause a backfire against one of these top-notch defenses that they're going to have to get through to get to the national championship or to win a national championship.
I think the cutesy stuff kind of went out the window when Bo left. One of the things that made me nuts about the Bo package was that Drew Aller would be like, he's 3 of his last 3 for 52 yards. And all of a sudden, he's lined up at wide receiver. Here comes Bo Prabula to run for 8 yards. It's like, why would you kill the momentum? Again, when you have Tyler Warren, you're going to do cutesy stuff still. But you eliminate one of those factors and that desire to do it by getting Bo involved.
Yeah, I don't know. Just keep it simple, guys. Go win this damn game. I want, if we can link us all up, when Notre Dame beats Georgia, which I picked and Ryan did not, let that be said on this podcast, Notre Dame fan. I didn't pick Ohio State. So anyways, when Notre Dame and Penn State meet next week, Matt, if we can find some free time with you, I want a duel. I'll just be the, what do we call it, a moderator during the election. Matt's Penn State, Ryan's Notre Dame, and let's go at it.
Listen, here's the problem. Like many people who grew up Catholic in northeastern Pennsylvania, I come from a long line of also Notre Dame fans. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for Notre Dame in my heart too, which is a cardinal sin as a Penn State fan.
Yeah.
Listen, I would love nothing more than to debate you next week, because that means that I had a very good day on Wednesday.
The late game is crazy for you guys. That's nuts.
It's not going to kick off till like 9:05. And I have to work at 7 o'clock the next day.
He's over here whining when his co-host knowingly took the Thursday off after these games were planned. That's why you look at a schedule and think ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Wasn't that smart?
Well, Matt, if you're willing, I don't know if you already did on your show. If you haven't, you don't have to do it on ours. But before we get to it, I want your prediction for the other 3 games first. I think you can give us that.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to win those?
A good bit. I'll go in order. I think first things first is Texas, Arizona State. Arizona State's best receiver is out, and the guy who I think is stepping up is former Penn State transfer Malik McClain. And I have some scarring from Penn State's receiver room in 2023. So I'm going to go. I think Quinn Ewers is a better quarterback than he gets credit for. I really do. So I'm going to give it Texas by 17 on that one. I think Texas wins that one by a good margin. So give me Texas, 34, Arizona State 17.
Okay. What about the Rose Bowl?
We're actually going to be Rose Bowl. I've gone back and forth in this a ton.
Don't break my heart, man.
If that Ohio State team that walked out on that horseshoe and dragged Tennessee up and down the field for an hour and a half shows up, man, that's a different level of beast. I don't know. Dan Lanning with a month to prepare makes me think he's got some real sicko shit up his sleeve, and it's really weird. But I really still believe Ohio State's the best team in the country, and I'm going to take Ohio State to win. I'll lay the points, the 2.5, and I'll take Ohio State. I mean, there's going to be scoring in that game. You can run on that. You can run on Oregon. I think you can pass a little bit on Igbenogson in Ohio State secondary.
It's just a lot of this, Matt.
I mean, listen,
Holding.
If
Number one,
strategy,
defense.
If you want 15 yards at a time, you got a way to do it.
Chuck it deep.
I'm going to go Ohio State 28, Oregon 24.
Okay. Now let's break Ryan's heart. The Sugar Bowl.
This one's the toughest one with Carson Beck being out. Not that I'm the biggest Carson Beck believer, but dude, it sucks. This poor kid's first career start is going to come against a Notre Dame defense that is not going to be rusty. I think rust is going to be a real thing we're going to see with these teams that had buys. I think this Notre Dame defense is going to come out aggressive. Ryan, remind me, who's the Notre Dame defensive lineman who was out for the year?
Riley Mills.
Riley Mills. Well, one of the 3 defensive linemen who are out for the year. Their defense is like a Final Destination movie right now.
I've really gone back and forth on this. Man, on one hand, the Big Ten in me wants to root for Georgia because I really think it'd be cool if Penn State can eventually go on to beat the Big Ten or the SEC champion. I think that would be cool. Also, a big part of me really wants to get a lot of fun phone calls from relatives next week talking about Notre Dame and Penn State. My gut right now does say Notre Dame. My gut right now, and it's a toss-up. It's 51-49. My gut says Notre Dame. I think kind of a slugfest. I'm not the biggest Riley Leonard fan, but I'm going to give it 20-17. Feels attainable.
Yep. And I'm 100% certain you're not picking Boise to win this game. So, what is the final line we got, Ryan? 12.5?
I think it's
11. 11. Matt, do they cover the spread? Penn State.
All right, I will fess up. I showed a lot of cowardice on my own podcast in the SMU preview. I thought Penn State was going to roll SMU. I thought it was going to be so cold. I like Kevin Jennings, but I think that I really thought the Penn State defense was going to, buck up, and I picked Penn State to win in a squeaker, and I felt so dumb and so cold. So I'm not going to. Cowardice is never rewarded, so I'm not going to repeat it. I think this is going to sound so disrespectful, but I think this is just such a poor matchup for Boise. I really do. This Penn State defense, no disrespect to Ashton Genty, but this Penn State defense is the best he's going to face. I know what he did against Oregon, but Week 2 Oregon is a very different beast than anything else Oregon put out all season long.
Yep.
So I think Penn State covers that spread. I have them Penn State 42, Boise 17.
Woo! Can we at least get it close to at least halftime? I would like to be able to. I mean, I'm going to sit and enjoy. Again, no offense to Boise. We're in this for the Big Ten. We're the Midwest here. We're not, well, I guess USC, Oregon, all of them are out in the West Country anyways. But
Iowa let us down today, boys, in that bowl game.
Yeah, they did.
That was killer.
Blew a double-digit lead, But, they showed signs of scoring, so that's a plus. I don't know. Does Sullivan have any more eligibility?
Yeah, he's back next year.
Okay.
I think.
I saw Bo Prabula was looking to transfer there, and I would have DM'd the kid and said, "I will donate NIL to you directly."
That would have been spicy because if Iowa's defense was not the Iowa defense of years past this year, but damn if they found it next year and added Bo to that. Oh my goodness, that could have been fun. They just don't have a receiver to throw the ball to, but and no Caleb Johnson, but that would have been spicy.
They're always going to find some running back.
Yeah, and that's what this NIL and transfer portal stuff is so crazy now, man. I remember back in the day, coaches used to block you from schools that you could transfer to so that you couldn't transfer to direct competition or within conference to keep you away from that. But, I'm with you. I hope he goes to Missouri with Drinkowitz, and I hope they light the SEC on fire because nothing would love me to see more than next year Alabama crying again because they're not in and Lane Kiffin complaining because he's not in, and nothing would make me happier.
One of my favorite troll jobs I do with some buddies back home who are SEC fans is that all SEC quarterbacks are just failed Big Ten quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, Quinn Ewers, Peyton Thorne, Graham Mertz. They can't cut it in the Big Ten, so they go down. Will Levis, so they
Jackson Dart too.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart, yeah.
Once you start thinking about it, there might be some truth to that theory.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Quinn Ewers in there is also very fun. Considering Quinn Ewers Ohio State tenure.
All right, Matt, I have one more question unless Ryan has something to wrap you up before we let you go.
Nope.
What do you think of peanut butter on an egg breakfast sandwich?
Are disgusting.
I'm gonna break your heart here.
Uh-oh.
I am allergic to peanut butter, so I have never had peanut butter.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I've
never mind.
Had it. I'm open to it. but not open to it. But like the concept, I see what you're going for. Eggs are like the everyman food. Like it's really hard to put
Thank
some
you.
on eggs and really mess them up.
Yeah. So
No,
I don't know how this
butter's
came
too
across. How
far.
many podcast episodes was this ago, Ryan? Whatever it was, Ryan went
It
out to
wasn't
dinner
that
with a
far.
former roommate.
It wasn't that long ago. It
And
was
if
like
you
2
s-
weeks ago.
If you see the tweet that he posted, it's a screenshot of his text message. Just like, did this guy really fucking put peanut butter on his egg sandwich? And I'm like, heck yes, I did. One of my roommates in PT school was like, dude, maximum protein. You got to put some peanut butter on your eggs. I was like,
That is
let's
maximum
go,
protein.
baby.
I gotta give him credit. I'll tell you what, that's better than Taco Bell potatoes if you want to have a bulk.
That's true. Listen, he's just ahead of his time here.
Yeah. So apparently, in the postseason and the off season, when there's not much to talk about, people would like a live stream video of Clinton eating this supposed egg and peanut butter sandwich. So we will notify you if you'd like to tune in, so
Okay,
everyone can witness this because they think I'm
We're,
disgusting for some
yeah,
reason.
That he puts ketchup on his turkey sandwiches.
Why not?
Are we talking deli meat turkey? Like
I'm talking post Thanksgiving turkey, which we're not
that's
gonna be able.
deli meat turkey where it's like crazy processed and 95% salt.
Yeah, no.
That's
No.
crazy. Yeah.
No, that's a little mustard mayo. I'm talking next day, nice, or even that night, a little nice cold turkey on some white bread back in the day, a little ketchup, eat it up, baby.
Okay, I dig it. I'm a sriracha on mac and cheese kind of guy.
Oh, I like
Okay.
I
that.
feel that absurd though.
No,
Yeah.
that's normal.
Yeah, I feel like that's in the realm. Yeah.
What about? God, we're going so off the rails here. Tuna in your mac and cheese.
Oh, I do love a tuna fish sandwich. I make a mean tuna melt, not to toot my own horn, but I do love a tuna melt. With
I
rye
do love
bread.
tuna.
Yeah. I've never done tuna in mac and cheese.
It's not bad. Again, you get some nice
lobster
clean
mac and
protein
cheese.
plus your carbs.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people done bacon. I've heard hot dogs and mac and cheese.
Oh,
But
yeah,
I've seen that.
my cousin showed it to me once, and I used to get down with some tuna packets, and so I put it in the mac and cheese. Like, this isn't the worst thing ever. It covers up the tuna flavor. Ryan, I hope you.
Respectable than peanut butter and
I hope
egg.
I hope your friend and former roommate is listening to this podcast. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with this guy?
I think tuna and mac and cheese is again on the spectrum of normal, but like eggs and peanut butter, that's just not. That does not seem
Can't
like
miss it
something
until you
that-
try it.
I'm not
Isn't
gonna.
peanut butter bagel a thing? I feel like I'm such a layman in this world because I've never had it before. But like, I feel like peanut butter bagels are a thing. Is that right?
Absolutely, peanut butter on like a plain bagel all
Yeah.
day.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
I've done
I see
peanut
that you got
butter
it.
on an everything bagel before. Just because I'm like addicted to peanut butter.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, man. We've now turned into a food Clinton podcast. So for all of you who tuned in tonight, whether you're listening or watching live, we will let you all know when I show off my delicious peanut butter and egg sandwich.
Clinton,
Where
they
I
heard.
work in Chicago is right by the Nutella store.
Mhm.
Or
Shit.
the Nutella restaurant or whatever. And again, I have a nut allergy, so I've never been. But I'm walking to work one day, and I see you guys know Benedict Mathurin, who was on the Pacers. He might still be on the Pacers right now.
Mhm.
He played at Arizona, and I'm like walking by, and it was just very funny to see like a 11 NBA player stand in line at the Nutella cafe. I don't know why it like broke my brain for a second.
That's awesome.
Oh boy. We should probably stop now before everyone is further disgusted by your disgusting food
Hey now. Hey.
proclivities, Clinton. Well, Matt, thank you once again for joining us this evening. Hopefully we can do this again in a week when Notre Dame and Penn State are playing. But if it's Georgia and Penn State, then I'm just going to jump off a bridge. So
Hey, the
It's
gift
the
we
night
all
together.
want.
The Thursday night college football game. Why these games aren't on Saturdays on that?
oh my God,
Yeah.
I know that's ridiculous.
Scared of the NFL, man. Scared of the NFL. That's your
That's
day.
true.
That is your day. College football's day is Saturday. Don't be scared of them. And it's just so weird. I mean, at least they're getting 10 days off, I guess, in between all this. But who
I
knows?
did get a little bit of sick joy after the Penn State SMU game. A lot of my buddies are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, so to watch them go from the high of the playoff win to watching Lamar win that game by 3 scores was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the gift we all could get, if we wanted one more post-Christmas gift, it would be both SEC teams get knocked out this weekend or this week.
that would be nice.
Just to, because I just want to see the discourse of people throwing it back in their face about how great they are, and then they're done so.
That was an elite Twitter night on Saturday night during the first quarter of that Ohio State.
Well,
Penn
you
State
know
game.
it's coming tomorrow night from Lane Kiffin when Penn State blows Boise's doors off. He'll be right back at it. Kirk Herbstreit, too.
Who's calling the
Always
game?
something.
Who's calling that game?
It's Bob Wasusian, I apologize. I definitely butchered his name. Rashusin. I can't get that. I have a crazy last name too, and I can't get that right. And Lewis Riddick, and I forget who the sideline reporter was.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
I can get down with that.
They're putting a pick guy on there for us. I noticed it. I see what ESPN's doing.
Pandering to the crowd. Well, thank you again, Matt, for joining us this evening. I don't, Clinton, when are we coming back here?
We're coming back, I would assume, Thursday night. We're not going to do Wednesday night because somebody got to go to work the next day.
We're not going to do Wednesday night because there's going to be a game going on until 1 a.m. Duh.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
Live reaction with Ryan as Georgia crosses the end zone to game win.
God.
I'm just kidding.
At 3 a.m. Eastern time.
Thursday night, as long as you're alive, Ryan.
I'll probably be alive. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in again. We'll see you on Thursday after the quarterfinals games. Got it right this time.
Thanks, fellas.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much, man.
Anytime.
Sorry about my mic, dude. Every time I'm in a real fight, my mic does something that makes me nuts.